Hi guys, welcome back to this channel. I know that this is something kind of different of the usual videos on this channel, but I'm really sure you'll enjoy this new section called I'm going to talk about whatever the fuck I want. And honestly, I'm quite happy because one of the big topics I wanted to discuss pretty much is always about some story out there. It doesn't matter if it's a book, a movie, a video game. I would like to make a lot more things about video games, but definitely the way to go it will be with a book. Honestly, I never had the chance to actually review books, and I don't want to review books. This is not the intention of the video. Well, the only goal here is just to share some thoughts and to see what happens. So the topic for today will be this fucking book. Actually, it's been a while since I read a novel that made me feel so disconnected from someone. Usually I try to be as sympathetic as I can with any author out there, no matter their background, their culture, or country. And trust me when I tell you that as soon as I finished this book, I wanted to look for Yanigihara, invite her a coffee, and ask her if she really thought this would be a good idea. Or at least if it sounded okay in her head. This definitely has been one of the most painful experiences I had with the book since I read Wuthering Heights. Fuck you, Emily. Charlotte is way better than you. But whoa. Hold on a minute. Don't pull out your own baby yet, my friend. Honestly, I don't think there is such a thing as a bad book, but if something doesn't click with you while you're reading it, there is a huge chance to discover whether you're stupid or if the author was really high when he wrote this big ass brick. And trust me when I tell you that I'm pretty sure both things happened this time. But wait, a bit of context for you all. Hanya Yanigihara is an American writer born in Los Angeles with an important background as a publicist, and she actually worked with the New York Times. She is also the author of two other books called To Paradise and People Under Trees, including the book that inspired this video. I know that this introduction is as short as your attention span, but trust me, it's enough to move forward. A Little Life is a fiction novel about four friends from New York. I know, the New York thing is already a bad omen that this is a generic story, and it is, but not in the way you think. Youth, Jean-Baptiste, Willem, and Malcolm. These are the four friends that actually are like the protagonists in the novel. But actually, two of them will be reduced to a really forgettable second character. Basically, and without giving you tons of spoilers, we'll follow Jude's incredibly tragic past and how his experience affected his life and relationships, not only with his friends, but with a bunch of other characters throughout the novel. Then there is Willem, an actor whose brother's disabilities and subsequent death force him to see life as an endless quest to find someone he can take care of. And Harold, probably the best written character in the entire book, but one that the author removes almost entirely out of the plot, but we'll get back to him later. So let's talk about how you definitely shouldn't live with your trauma. Okay, a tiny disclaimer here. Nothing of what I'm about to say should be taken as a mockery or as if I'm laughing about someone's unfortunate experiences with abuse, violence, etc. So don't be a dick, just hear me out, please. Trauma is something we can classify as a complex emotion, not because happiness or sadness are simple, but because the source of a trauma can only be explained analyzing the specifics of each individual's life. One really good example that I'm never going to be tired of quoting, it will be Crime and Punishment. Dostoevsky, that is the actual author of that novel, not only explores how guilt consumes the protagonist, but also vividly portrays life in Russia at that time. Poverty, the harsh conditions faced by college students, unemployment, strained family relationships, and even the psychological toll of the oppressive weather on Russia. For those who know the story story already, you'd imagine that even if the murderer Raskolnikov, the main protagonist of Crime and Punishment, commits, it's a turning point of the novel. Everything and everyone around him forced him to do so. And that perfectly explains how the novel ends. If you're perceptive enough, you'll notice that Crime and Punishment isn't a novel about a murder, not even about the circumstances that led him to kill. It is a broad and incisive critique of how Russia's social problems at that time drove people insane or to crime just to survive another day. Okay, Snob, but what does that have to do with my main woman, Yanagihara? A lot, actually. I don't know how successful everyone is right after college, but it seems that that's not a problem for Jude and his friends. Everyone ends up doing great and having tons of money, even though one of them has an arts major and the other guy is an actor. Kinda hard to believe, huh? Jude, of course, as a regular protagonist, he needed to be a genius. He has a major in laws and also a minor in mathematics. But later on, the math thing was completely forgotten by the author. As any brilliant generic character out there, Jude was really good at everything, but not maintaining healthy relationships. Basically, Jean-Baptiste, that we're going to refer to him as JV from this point on. Willem and Malcolm adopted him like any group of extroverts adopting an introvert friend. They knew almost nothing about him for most of the book. So actually in the novel, it seems that they became friends out of nowhere. But okay, let's keep on going. Jude has a professor called Harold that, as if it were 21 blackjack, he was astonished with Jude's cleverness. They become friends quickly. Harold and his wife invited him to dinner, and they grew close to him despite his reluctance to open up. Did you notice I say friends? Well, Harold's son died at a young age. So an orphaned, brilliant student became the perfect emotional replacement for Harold. But wait, hold on. I'm not laughing about this, but it is weird that two people with serious unresolved trauma, they were trying to bond like this. I don't know about you guys, but I don't look for friends to fill the void in me. I like to keep my relationships genuine and without any codependency. And well, tiny spoiler here, Harold ends up adopting Jude as his son. But actually this new father-son relationship doesn't develop at all throughout the book. But okay, let's move on. You guys remember Willem? So after Jude tries to have a relationship with a guy named Caleb, who basically was beating the shit out of Jude, Willem, out of nowhere, he became a great actor. He filmed 12 movies and he won 5 Oscars in a year. And he actually got back to take care of Jude once again. Another tiny spoiler here that is really needed. They end up having a formal relationship. They travel all over the world and even they have a romantic date in this fucking place. Because what the fuck? But please note that Willem went through a really painful experience in which his brother, who had a chronic and degenerative disability, died after years of Willem caring for him during his teenage years. And of course, genius, that created a major trauma in him. And of course, the need of being a perpetual caretaker. So if I earned for each major interaction in this book that is based not on genuine development, but purely on trauma, I'd have 2 coins. That is not a lot, but it's kind of weird, isn't it? So if everything so far doesn't sound weird enough, well, Jude's trauma is so overwhelming that he harms himself through the entire book, and he even attempted to. But you would say, my friend, what does this have to do with Crime and Punishment? Well, compared to A Little Life, at least Crime and Punishment feels real. Yanagihara takes for granted that 4 really diverse Americans all got into college while the Ivy League acceptance rate is under the 5%. And somehow, they can all afford the New York rent, currently around $4,000 a month, while studying arts and acting, without mentioning all the real life problems that come with living in an urban hell such as New York. Everything in the book seems to happen out of nowhere. And it feels like she only wanted to create a spectacle out of morbid, low-effort depictions of abuse and violence, using them only as a cheap shock value to make readers feel disgusted. Because if you try to go deeper into the plot, I'm afraid you'll find a very shallow story that doesn't give a fuck about the real source of the problem. This kind of novels try to be deep without actually analyzing or caring about the actual problem. They deny and ignore the real problems Americans are facing right now and waste a huge amount of pages to ultimately say nothing. Yanagihara's novel is tricky to criticize because even if the whole book is a nonsense, a lot of people will sympathize with Jude because they share similar traumas. Any critique of the book might seem like a critique to the real issues it tries to depict. Also, going back to the Alhambra thing, this place, why the fuck so many novels needs to jump from one exotic location to another without caring if it adds something to the actual story? Honestly, it makes them look like cheap tourist guides. Personally, I like to interpret A Little Life as a big warning of two things. One, the real need to confront your trauma and go to therapy. And something I think should have been the moral of the book, that even if we care about people going through hardships, you shouldn't over-care for them. People like you may or may not ever change. It doesn't matter whether you spend your entire life with them or if you simply ignore them. Trying to change someone is a risky but honorable thing. But would you spend your entire life and dreams hoping that someone will magically change? Are you sure it will worth it? If Yanagihara's goal was to reflect this in her book, she's probably actually a genius. But if it wasn't, then this book falls into a shallow, sensationalistic category that, rather than helping people dealing with their trauma, just shows how little the society cares about them because it doesn't even understand them. Honestly, there are a lot more things about the book's plot I can share so we can discuss them. But honestly, it isn't a book I would recommend at all. The time you'll be spending reading it could be used to read Anna Karenina instead, that has a similar length, but probably it will change your perspective of life forever. And if you're looking for a novel to help you go through serious trauma, you definitely need to close the book and go to therapy. Of course, out of this, I'm really sure there are a lot of people out there that sympathize with the novel. This is not a critique to them. It's actually that I heard somewhere that if Jude would have went to therapy at the beginning of the book, probably the book will last only 200 pages. And honestly, I think it is true, but I don't like to share or to recommend any books that doesn't try to understand people's problems, or it doesn't even care about share something new. Because honestly, it only feels that it's just a story because she wanted to create a story and they didn't even research about anything. And if they did, the research was really shallow. So thank you guys. Please let me know here in the comments, what do you think about this book? Please, if you want to fight, let's fight. That's what this channel is about. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.